Keep the 150. Do not descend.
Accelerate, Sanyo.
Get to the 150 because of the 140. Stop one!
On November 12, 1996, the Indian skies bore witness to the deadliest chapter in aviation history. In the airspace near the town of Charkhi-Dadri, two passenger aircraft, Saudi Airlines Flight 763 and Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, collided midair. The collision claimed all 349 lives on board. It was a routine, hectic evening at Indira Gandhi International Airport. The events leading up to this catastrophic moment were deceptively ordinary. The weather was clear, the winds calm, and everything was proceeding smoothly. But like dominoes falling into place, all the factors were silently aligning to set the stage for the biggest air disaster India had ever witnessed. Three aircraft shared the same airspace, unaware of the grim history about to unfold. At the heart of this tragic sequence were the two passenger planes. Saudi Airlines Flight 763 had just taken off at 18:32 p.m. from New Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport, en route to Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. It was a Boeing 747 that was carrying 293 passengers and 32 crew members on board. Simultaneously, Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, a Soviet-made Ilyushin Il-76 cargo plane, was descending into New Delhi. The Kazak aircraft had departed from Shymkent Airport as a non-scheduled flight and was bringing 13 traders to India. The aircraft used for the flight was a 4-year-old Ilyushin Il-76TD. Among them was also a U.S. Air Force jet, conducting routine operations in the area, destined to become an involuntary witness to one of aviation's darkest chapters. While this military plane would carry on its flight unaffected, the other two, Flight 763 and Flight 1907, were moments away from a tragedy that would rewrite the rules of air safety forever. Flight 673 was steadily gaining altitude as per the instructions of the air control tower. The plane climbed to an altitude of 14,000 feet and was awaiting permission to climb to the cruising altitude. However, within minutes, a critical error occurred. The Kazakh crew, struggling with limited English proficiency and outdated equipment, failed to adhere to their assigned altitude. They descended from 23,000 feet to below the instructed 15,000 feet. In doing so, they entered the airspace of the Saudi jet, climbing to 14,000 feet. On radar screens at the Air Traffic Control Center, the blips representing the two planes inched closer and closer. But by the time the controller could issue a warning, it was too late. The U.S. Air Force jet saw an orange-colored explosion to its right and reported it to the ATC. At an altitude of approximately 14,000 feet, the left wing of the Kazakh flight sliced through the left wing of the Saudi 747, while the left horizontal stabilizer of the 747 sliced off the vertical stabilizer of the Kazakh flight. The Saudi plane immediately went into a rapidly descending spiral and broke up midair before crashing into the ground at a nearly supersonic speed. The Ilyushin went into a flat spin and followed suit. The collision felt like an inferno of destruction, tearing apart the structure of both aircraft. Witnesses on the ground described a deafening explosion and fireballs in the sky as debris rained down over a wide area near the small town of Charkhi-Dadri. This mid-air collision was not just a tragic loss of life, it was a turning point for aviation safety. In its aftermath, international aviation bodies implemented stricter regulations for airspace management, mandatory use of collision avoidance systems, and enhanced language training for pilots and air traffic controllers. But what exactly went wrong in those critical moments? Let's look at the sequence of events that led up to this unprecedented disaster. If you're interested in stories that uncover the hidden details behind historic disasters and how they shape the world, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Together, let's investigate what really went wrong. The Indira Gandhi Airport in New Delhi had become one of the most congested airports in the world. In 1990, India signed an open skies agreement that would allow international airlines to land at Indian airports. But this new policy put the ATC controllers in a tough position. The airport served as a vital gateway for both domestic and international flights. Indian authorities allowed only a narrow air corridor for civilian air traffic. Thus, managing the flow of aircraft in and out of New Delhi was proving to be a tightrope between normal operations and total disaster. Air traffic controllers tasked with handling the incoming and outgoing flights often fell under immense pressure. On the evening of November 12, 1996, this airspace was under particular strain, with a significant number of flights arriving and departing in close succession. The Saudi Flight 763 had made all the pre-flight checks, and everyone was already on board. In charge of the flight was 45-year-old Captain Khalid Al-Shubali, a veteran pilot with 9,837 flight hours. Assisting the captain was First Officer Nazir Khan and flight engineer Ahmed Idris. Both pilots were quite accustomed to this route and were well aware of the busy airspace of the airport. Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 had taken off from Shymkent Airport and was cruising at an altitude of 23,000 feet. It was about to land at Indira Gandhi Airport. In charge of Flight 1907 was 44-year-old Captain Alexander Cherepanov, a highly experienced pilot with 9,229 flying hours. Assisting the captain were First Officer Ermek Dzangarov, flight engineer Alexander Chuprov, navigator Zahanbek Aripbayev, and radio operator Igor Rep. The cockpit was crowded and buzzed with distracting chatter. Approach controller V.K. Duda was on duty at Indira Gandhi International Airport during the tragic collision. He was in charge of navigating both flights, along with any other in the vicinity of the airport. At the time of the crash, he was controlling and communicating with 3 aircraft simultaneously. The final countdown to the disaster had begun. What was the exact chain of events? Let's take a look. 3:25 p.m. Kazakh Flight 1907 took off from Shymkent Airport, Kazakhstan, and bound for a 3-hour-long journey towards Indira Gandhi Airport, Delhi. 6:20 p.m. Saudi Flight 763 pushed back from the gate and was ready for takeoff. 6:23 p.m. Flight 1907 reported cruising at 33,000 feet and was 177 miles west of Delhi. Then, while passing 24,000 feet, it was transferred over to Delhi ATC. The controller greeted the plane. Good evening, 1907. Passing through 230 for 180, 74 miles from DPN. 6:32 p.m. The Saudi flight took off from the airport and was immediately cleared for an altitude of 10,000 feet. 6:34 p.m. Dutta cleared the Kazakh plane to descend to 15,000 feet. Kazakh 1907, descend to level 150. Report reading. 6:36 p.m. Dutta cleared the Saudi plane, traveling on the same airway but in the opposite direction to climb to 14,000 feet. Remember that both planes are flying in the same air corridor towards each other, but just at different altitudes. 6:38 p.m. The SVA crew reported reaching 14,000 feet and requested a higher level. Dutta told them to hold their altitude and stand by, to which First Officer Khan replied, Saudi 763 will maintain 140. 6:39 p.m. The Kazakh flight reported having reached its assigned altitude of 15,000 feet, but it was higher at 16,348 feet and still descending. At this time, Dutta advised the flight. Identified traffic 12 o'clock, reciprocal, Saudi Boeing 747 at 10 miles, likely to cross in another 5 miles. Report if in sight. Radio operator Rep requested clarification, to which Dutta replied, traffic is at 8 miles, level 140. Rep acknowledged the update and signed off with, now looking 1907. Both planes had entered a thick cloud and were facing mild turbulence. 6:40 p.m. A United States Air Force aircraft spotted what looked like a pair of fireballs falling from the sky. The U.S. aircraft, en route from Islamabad to Delhi, reported to Delhi Tower about a cloud lit up with an orange glow at the 2 o'clock position of his aircraft. As the pilot descended near Delhi, he spotted 2 fireballs diverging away from each other. The pilot called Delhi approach and communicated. We saw something to our right. Looks like a big fireball. Something looks like a big explosion. The U.S. Air Force pilot continued. While passing through, we saw a big fireball in the cloud, and I saw fire debris. 2 distinct fires on the ground. Dutta attempted to contact the Saudi and Kazakh flights, but received no response. The recorder of the Saudi Arabian plane revealed the pilot said the Islamic Istighfar, forgiveness prayer, and recited the Shahada before succumbing to their deaths. Both planes made the final impact 7 kilometers apart from each other. The mustard and grain fields of Charkhi Dadri were now burning with the twisted wreckage of two ill-fated planes. All 349 lives were cut short by the unforeseen tragedy. No ground fatalities were reported. In charge of the investigation was the Lahoti Commission, headed by then Delhi High Court Judge Ramesh Chandra Lahoti. The ATC operator VK Ditta was bombarded with investigations and inquiries, and the black boxes and cockpit voice recorders were sent to Moscow and London for decoding. The investigation concluded that the cause of the accident was the failure of Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907's pilots to follow ATC instructions. The Indian controllers also pointed out that Kazakh pilots sometimes confused their calculations because they used metric readouts rather than feet and nautical miles. Factors contributing to the crash were a poor understanding of English by the Kazakh pilot, poor airmanship by the Kazakh pilot in command, the casual attitude of the crew in carrying out their duties, the absence of standard callouts from any member of the crew. Following the mid-air collision, the Indian Directorate General of Civil Aviation mandated that all aircraft flying in and out of India had to be equipped with an airborne collision avoidance system. The skies above Charkhi Dadri were forever scarred by this devastating tragedy, a stark reminder of the importance of clear communication and precise coordination. The lessons learned from this collision prompted changes that have since saved countless lives, but the cost of those lessons remains immeasurable. As we reflect on the events of that fateful evening, let us honor the memory of those who lost their lives and hope that such a disaster never happens again. Who was at fault here? The Kazakh pilots, outdated air control systems, or just fate? Let us know in the comments below.